They said he would die when he was 2. He's just had his 2nd birthday.
Can anything save his life?
Yes, a liver transplant. It can be done.
Jill Bradley took the call and told Sean Woodward, who was one of our researchers, and he came and found me in the canteen.
I talked to Esther about it, and she said, just take a film crew and go. So I went out to interview Debbie, went into their house, and saw this fantastic little boy, rather yellow, because his liver illness actually meant that he was very heavily jaundiced. But he had the most beautiful eyes, and he was just a lovely, lovely 2-year-old.
And so Sean did an interview which is one of the finest I've ever heard with Debbie, and she was so eloquent.
Every day sounds awful, but you do wonder if it's going to be your last day, especially if you sort of tell him off for anything, and you put him to bed and you think, oh, God, you know, is he going to get up in the morning? Because you just don't know. He could literally die tomorrow.
She was very, very young, in her early 20s. She'd never spoken publicly before. But desperation gave her this urgency.
We asked Debbie if she had a message for any parent who might, tragically, be in a position to save him. She said,
surely, though, that if that child that has died, if that child has then given life to another child, isn't that some sort of consolation to the parents eventually? Maybe not immediately, but eventually, surely it must be some consolation that, you know, they have saved another child.
When we took it to our boss at the BBC at the time, he was very unsure of us doing this. He said, well, what if Ben dies? You know, you can't guarantee that in doing this story, which is a very serious story, that you're going to save his life. And if he dies, you know, the programme's going to have to live with that. And Esther just sort of sucked air for a moment, looked at him straight between the eyes, and just said, but if we don't do this story, he is going to die anyway. This is his only chance. And we did it.
Within a week, I think we had an offer of 3 or 4 organ donors, 2 of which would have been suitable for Ben, and 1 of which we, in fact, used.
this is Ben as he was after the operation in intensive care.
And people watched his story with fascination. People were talking to me about it wherever I went. How's he doing now? Is he getting better?
So here now, for the first time on television, is Marty Webb to sing her version of Ben.
Then the 2 of us need look no more. We both found what we were looking for.
This Wednesday, for the first time, we were allowed to take our film cameras into the children's ward in Addenbrooke's Hospital in Cambridge. And there, as you see, he looks extremely happy.
You've got a friend in me.
One of the difficulties for Ben was that the operation came very, very late for him. He'd been sick for a year or so before Debbie ever came to That's Life and asked for help. And of course Ben did get the operation, and it was a success, but it wasn't successful enough for Ben, which meant that some months later he became ill and he died.
The funeral took place in Surrey today of Ben Hardwick, the 3-year-old boy who was Britain's youngest liver transplant patient. Ben became known to millions after his plight was featured on the programme That's Life.
I remember all of us being incredibly moved and very, very upset by it. But out of a tragedy came something extremely positive and extremely good.
If you tell the story of one case, and it's powerful enough, it illuminates a whole issue.
On Monday, there was a debate in the House of Commons about transplants. Sir John Biggs Davison proposed it. He told us,
and I felt the time had come for MPs to have a full and proper discussion of the present system of transplants in this country.
on Wednesday, there's going to be a campaign to launch these. Now, these are donor cards. And later in this programme, we'll be looking back on the enormous achievement of this little boy's life, how many other lives Ben Hardwick has saved and will continue to save by his example. His courage and determination of his family will not be forgotten.
Of course, I would have given anything if it had been Ben that had been saved.
you know, if he was still here. But it is still, at least, I do have a sense of, or a feeling that he didn't live and have such a short life for nothing. I sit here now, all this time has passed, and they are successfully carrying out transplants. I understand it's almost routine surgery. And it's incredible to think that it did all come from Ben being on That's Life.
One of the things that was most difficult was once we started doing items like Ben Hardwick, was finding a way of coming out of that and moving towards the end of the show when there'd be an entertaining item. We had to find a way that didn't crunch terribly. And what we did was we started doing what we called recaps, and what the audience would understand as updates. We would tell them about stories that we'd done before with positive endings, and then after that they would feel free to laugh at the jokes that we put at the end.
Now, following our item about the water from the River Piddle last week, Mr. Brown from Edinburgh wrote to say that some time ago he had some suspicions about its claims, and he sent a sample to the county analyst. A few days later he received a letter. Dear sir, I much regret to inform you your horse has diabetes.
Which brings us to this week's talented pet, which is not, I'm afraid, a horse, but it is a very fast dog. It's an old English sheepdog called Tramp, who has actually learnt to drive a car.
It is my joy and delight to have a programme that transmits on April the 1st. I just love it. And it happened to us 3 times in 21 years, so we made the most of it.
I was looking through a box of letters one day and I came across some photographs that were sent in by a woman who did an Old English sheepdog impression in pantomimes and summer seasons and children's parties.
I think we met in a cutting room and she put on her dog costume. And obviously it wouldn't have worked close up, but from a distance it was very convincing. So Nick, who's a bit of a genius, got a real dog.
Oh, not so fast, Tramp.
I got lovely Chris Searle, got a friend of his to be the owner of the dog, and we put together an April the 1st film.
You know, your mind is leaping ahead at this stage. You know, what about the feet? So, of course, you know, he had special pedal extensions made so the little doggy paws could get onto the controls. Automatic car, we'd thought it all through, you know. So it was all totally plausible. Get into gear. Tilt him around a little bit. That's all right. And in those sideways on shots, the car wasn't going under its own power at all. We actually had a huge truck with a kind of rig to the front wheels, towing it along.
And the woman in the suit sat in the back seat with her dummy paws stretched across Tramp's shoulder, holding the crossbar of the steering wheel.
Well, we're out driving one day, and suddenly the car veered over to the right, and I wondered what the devil was happening. And I shoved the brake on, so I saw we were approaching a ditch. And stopped the car, and there was Tramp wanting to get out, so I opened the door for him. What happens? He makes a beeline for the tree, cocks his leg up, marks the tree, gets back in, and off we go again.
The problem was that Tramp kept looking everywhere but through the windscreen. He was looking out of the window and barking at cats and licking the actor in the front seat. But I then found that by putting Tramp's real owner in the back of the towing Range Rover, he really did look through the windscreen, and it did look for all the world as if he was driving.
I don't want to worry you, Ben, but I think we've got company. I can see a police bike behind us. I think he's going to overtake. Yes,
Is this your vehicle, sir?
Yes, it is.
What is the registration number?
VW401.
Yes. Is it a left-hand drive?
No.
You're telling me, sir, that the dog is driving?
Yes, I am.
Don't you consider that rather dangerous?
No, he doesn't drive on the main road. He's perfectly safe.
Well, sir, I consider it dangerous, and I think I'd better have your driving licence, please.